definitely conscious of giving specifically Keegan a fair amount of space. Like, I know that he was safeguarded about like new people coming in, you know.
Yeah.
I also know like how, now that I've spent 2 years with him, like I know how professional he is at what he does
Yeah.
and how he approaches it. And for me, first and foremost, I didn't want to interrupt that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to capture it, you know? So
Yeah.
you know, obviously in the last couple of years, like you said, like the space that I have left open between us has gotten a lot narrower,
Yeah.
you know, especially with the camera.
Yeah.
But he's certainly has become more comfortable with me being around, and has, you know, he just knows that the camera's going to be in my hand most of the day. So.
What's going on, everybody? My name is JP, and I want to welcome you into the Stable Cyclist podcast, where we talk about bikes, life mentality, and when the occasion arises, mental health. Today's guest is Brett Rothmeyer, and this is part 2 of my series that'll go on throughout the next year, where once a month I bring in one of my friends from the film and photography world that I've met over the past year on the big race circuit, whether it's at Unbound or at Gravel Worlds or any of the other races I was filming at this year. These are people who are creating the images and the videos that you are enjoying about the Lifetime Grand Prix and many other races. Now, you might recognize Brett's work because he is the photographer for Keegan Swenson and the Santa Cruz Hit Squad, and so he is working very closely with those athletes week in and week out throughout the year and the racing calendar. But before we bring Brett in, I want to remind you that the Stable Cyclist podcast is sponsored by Flow Formulas. And if you are training or racing for a big race, or you're just starting to put those building blocks in place for next year, then Flow Formulas should be in your bottles before, during, and after as you train. And you can use the code JohnPeter15 at checkout to get a little discount on those items in your cart. All right, enough of all that. Let's get Brett Rothmeyer into the studio. Well, Brett Rothmeyer, welcome to the Stable Cyclist podcast. We have been confused on the road for each other, which means we're two skinny, bald, tattooed, good-looking men. And yeah, welcome to the show, man.
So it's a hard role to fill.
It is.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is it's cool. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. At Gravel Worlds, when Chase Wark told me there was somebody taking my picture that looked just like you in the dark, I'm like, oh, that was for sure Brett. So yeah, this is part of a series that we're doing this year, or that I'm doing on the show this year, where I'm bringing in the people that I've gotten to meet, people like yourself, Tilly Shull, Danny will be on soon. And you and I met standing on Little Egypt.
Yep.
Which, if there's like a more epic place in the gravel world that people know of its location, I don't know what that is, but yeah, we met out there. You are kind of known as Keegan's photographer, although I know your job description is much deeper than that. So I guess let's just start with explaining what your primary role in this world is, and like, what do you do?
My primary role, I guess, as far as a job goes, is being a photographer in this cycling space. It's something that I've been doing pretty consistently for 10 years. You know, it took a while to get to a point where it could be like a full-time job. But in the last 5 years, it's been a full-time job. Yeah, and being Keegan's photographer started last season in earnest, I guess. There was I had a brief visit in 2023 Unbound, which was quite a visit to take part in. You know, it was the year that he won. The year of a lot of finish line chaos. Kind of the year too, I would say that race really, there was like a pretty big changing point in that race. You know, like unlike a lot of people that are there, either racing or like doing photography or video, like I'm fairly new to that space. You know, a lot of the work I've done has been like in mountain biking and in cyclocross and some road stuff. So, but noticing the difference between 2023 and 2024 was huge.
Yeah.
It went from being this like spirit of gravel, everyone's participating in the same kind of event, to like a noticeably professional race in 2024.
Yeah. How does that change? I think we're going to kind of like unwind your career here in photography and go back. Like, how does you getting involved with Keegan and Santa Cruz happen? Because you mainly follow around Santa Cruz, or are you mainly following around Keegan and Santa Cruz happens to be there?
No, it's most definitely through Santa Cruz. The reason I'm there, and Tobin made this joke in the house this past week in Bentonville, is that I shot like, this is a very condensed version of it.
Sure.
I shot a photo of Tobin in probably 2012 or 2011 when he was a U23 rider. He was airing out the flyover at Providence Cross, and I just, saw him doing it and snapped a quick photo and didn't think anything of it, like posted it in a series of photos from that week and forgot about it. And the following season at the kickoff in Rochester, he approached me in the parking lot and just, came up to me and was like, "Hey, are you Brett Rothmeyer?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Dude, you took that photo of me last year at Providence on the flyover." He's like, "That was sick." And from like pretty much from that moment, I was just like, this kid rules. Like, I'm just going to take photos of him at every race. You know what I mean? Like, he was, at that time, he was up and coming. He was a young kid, probably 21, 22, definitely under 23 still, because he was racing on Cal Giant.
Yeah.
But was like starting to play a factor in the front ends of like bigger races. And so I shot him a lot that year after he had mentioned, came up to me. And that was the year he won U23 Nationals in Asheville. And I was there to see that and got some photos. And I believe it was the following season that he started racing for Santa Cruz proper. And then he kind of, took off in the cyclocross world from there. He became a dominant rider and was doing that pretty heavy for, I would say, 6 to 8 years in there. So my relationship with Santa Cruz as a brand is almost directly through Tobin. I did a little bit of work from them in that space, like some race coverage for them at nationals for him and a couple bigger UCI races. But I also had met through a previous job. I worked at Dirt Rag Magazine for a couple years there towards the end of their run. And just from being on press camps with Santa Cruz, I got to meet some of the guys that work in the marketing department through that.
Sure.
And just got on with them real well. Like Seb and Garen, who has now since left, were usually the guys that were out working with press and media in that time frame. And if you've ever had a chance to be on like a press trip with those two, you've guaranteed had a good time. So that's like basically how I got introduced to Santa Cruz, and then eventually it convinced them to hire me. So
Gotcha. So you mentioned that you transitioned to this full-time 5 years ago or so. What were you doing before that? What career did you have? Was it photography or?
No. It was most of it was bike related. I've worked in shops off and on quite a bit over the last 15 to 20 years. I've worked every sort of job there is, like construction, landscaping, but mostly like up until the run of getting hired to work full time at Dirt Rag, I was working in bike shops and carting myself around the bike races to try to like get the chops in and sell some photos. So at what point, I associate a lot of your pre-Keegan Santa Cruz life as a photographer in the CX world and in cyclocross.
it was just a hobby? How do you get into photography to begin with, and then start saying like, hey, I think I can actually like make some money off of this and eventually turn it into a career?
Yeah. Man, I've long had an obsession with magazines and imagery, like anything print, anything like photography based, like even before I even thought like of photography as something that I would do or a hobby I would pick up or anything that I tried to pursue. Like I grew up this is going to date me, but I grew up in the 90s skateboarding, which is not like as unique of a story as we once thought it was. Like the more that you meet people, even as isolated as you felt as a kid in the 90s skateboarding, you know, it wasn't cool. Like it was nothing like it is now. And then to continuously meet people that are our age, you know, that are like, oh yeah, I knew this guy, and you have these connections, and it's all through skateboarding. That was probably like the door opener for me, you know, like, because skateboarding was so image heavy, you know, before the websites were there, and before now it's just like every day you're getting like 1,000 new tricks on Instagram or whatever comes up. Like Thrasher and Transworld was the gateway to that. And you know, the photos and the stories and all of that stuff, like I had subscriptions to both of those magazines. I still have subscriptions to those magazines, so at least the ones that exist. You know, Thrasher's still in print and circulation, and so that if I was going to go all the way back, that was like the gateway to it. And then I had a lot of non-direction, like post high school, like going to college, going to community college, like working for like the school newspaper at community college, like taking journalism classes. I had transferred to like a proper 4-year school and was taking journalism classes there. And I just hated it. Like I hated the school. I hated the environment. I didn't like the classes. And so I dropped it, and, you know, I didn't want to feel like I was wasting time, or I wasn't being like moving towards something that you're supposed to move toward in adulthood. So as something to do, I signed up for a non-credit photography class at a small art school here in Pittsburgh called Filmmakers. Took a black and white class and just like fell in love with the darkroom. Was like the first thing that really caught me, was like just the ability to be in there and, you know, create these images from that. You know, at that time it was really the only way you could do it. You know, it was early 2000s, digital cameras were just coming about, and they were insanely expensive. So everyone from, you know, hobbyists to professionals were still shooting film. So, you know, I talk to people now because I still shoot a fair amount of film. And we had a store that was in a neighborhood called Squirrel Hill here in Pittsburgh, and it was called like the Photo Shop or the Photo something. And man, it was amazing. Like you could they had everything, you know, paper, chemicals, and just racks of film, you know, and you could buy rolls of film for $2-3 a pop and just go in there and like fill your bag up, go do your thing, and then go back to the lab at school and spend days there developing. So that was my real introduction to it.
When do you start to, I mean, where does the bike come into this too? Because not only do you shoot, I've actually seen pictures of you racing cyclocross, and like you're built like a cyclist, which tells me you like bikes a lot. And you're like a shop guy and all that. So like at what point tell us about finding the bike and all that. And then at some point these paths are going to crash into each other. The bike was introduced not long after starting to take some classes at Filmmakers. A really good friend of mine who I had met in high school, you know, we were doing some stuff like outdoor stuff. We were going on hikes and going camping, and he had moved to Charlotte to be with his then girlfriend. And while he was there, he bought a road bike and call it, you know, again, dating myself, like at the time, you had like call people on the telephone if you wanted to communicate. And so we would like check in with each other once every couple of weeks, see what's up. And like, he told me he had bought a road bike. I was like, why would you do that?
I was like, it sounds terrible. Like, why would you want to ride out on the road in traffic, whatever? And so he had come home and brought his bike, and a group of friends of ours, I borrowed like this clapped out mountain bike from somebody. We all went for a bike ride, and I was terrible at it, like awful. Last one up the hills, like couldn't figure the gears out, like was wearing like a pair of, just whatever, like baggy shorts and like a long sleeve t-shirt, no helmet, just dying, like
Sure.
absolutely dying. And I was so frustrated by being so bad at it. That year when I got my tax return check, I just took it straight to the bike shop and bought a road bike.
Of course.
Which is crazy to think about now because I was working kind of full-time, kind of part-time at a deli while I was taking classes. And I think I maybe got $650 back in taxes that year.
Yeah,
And you were able to buy a road bike for that amount of money and shoes.
Yeah.
And a helmet, and it was, granted, it wasn't the best stuff, but it got me on a bike, and then it just kind of spiraled from there,
Yeah.
I'm sure you can speak to it as well. It's like the first time you go 20 miles, you're like, oh, I rode a bike 20 miles today. That's crazy. And it's like 30 and 40 and whatever. And then I picked up a copy of Cycle Sport at like a Borders. And I believe it was definitely the Paris-Roubaix issue. And I remember like flipping through it and then like just bought it because the photos from that race that year were insane. It was 2002. So super muddy year.
Yeah.
Lots of all the carnage, like all of the epic imagery that you would think of when you think of Paris-Roubaix. Bought a coffee, sat down, and like just read the whole article sitting there. And I remember reading like the distance that they raced and the speed in which they did it and having like only the concept of like what I had been doing up until that point.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought it was fictional. Like there's no way that that's humanly possible,
Yeah.
And and that was really like a turning point for me in cycling because in my brain, you're like, well, if those guys can do that, I can do a fraction of that.
Yeah.
And then, you just go out and you push it. And eventually the next year, there's like a little local racing organization here that does like a weekly night crit. And I just showed up and started doing that and met some friends and just kind of like went headfirst into it and just became obsessed with the racing. Like kind of forgot about everything else, like everything went, like the camera included, like everything just went into a box and all I cared about was like riding my bike.
Yeah. I think a lot of us listening can relate to that at some point in our life.
Yeah. Because and I think a big thing for all of us, right, is like when you're new to something, like if you're semi-athletic,
Yes.
the acceleration is quick, right?
Yeah.
Like if you go from zero to not like zero, from absolutely no riding to riding 5-6 days a week, like your progression is going to be like astronomical.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it just stops. You get like 3-4 years in and you're like, I'm not getting any faster.
Yeah.
Like nothing's changing. And then like, and then you just have to love it to keep showing up and keep going. So
yeah.
So I'm definitely full on obsessed.
Yeah. Well, that's understandable. Is the first time you think about photography with cycling when you look at that Paris-Roubaix magazine, or is it at some other point where the light bulb goes off that I think I can go photograph this?
No, I honestly, it wasn't until much later. I would say if my story has any theme is that I am like a textbook late bloomer. Like never made the connection. And like while I was taking photography classes, like I never had like a direction there. Like I was just taking photos of whatever.
Yeah.
Like trying street photography, trying like night photography with film and just shooting like whatever was around. It wasn't until maybe after 5 or 6 years of racing bikes, I was racing cyclocross like pretty heavy, And I had a good friend that was pretty good at it and was racing the elites and racing UCI. So I would race either like the 2 race or the Masters race, you know, but by that point I was like tickling 35.
Sure.
And so I could race some of the Masters races and some of the series. And then I would pit for him in the afternoon for the UCI race. And it just got to the point where like we were going to so many and there was kind of a pattern and everything that I just started throwing my old Pentax like in the race bag. I was like, I'll just take it, you know, I'll just take it. And like sometimes I would shoot like 2 frames and sometimes I would shoot like a roll.
Yeah.
You know, and then like the more I did it, the more I started to enjoy it. And kind of like, and my son being born too was like a big reason for the camera to come back out.
Sure.
Like I spent, after I'd worked as a courier here in Pittsburgh, and as that is not the safest occupation to have with a newborn, you have to try to stay alive for. When my wife's, you know, maternity leave was over, I just quit the messenger job because it was cheaper for me to stay at home than it was to send our son to, like, me being home outweighed me chasing package money on a bicycle every day in the pouring rain. So, I kind of dug it back out. Like that was like in the springtime, and I would walk with him to the coffee shop every day and get a coffee and shoot some photos along the way. And then maybe in the next year or two, I started racing cross again, and I would just throw it in the bag and take it. So, and it was in that time where Bill Scheiken, CX Harris guy, had shot a photo at Greenough, which used to be like one of our bigger races during the season. And anyone that raced there knows there's this like kind of tower, like castle looking thing at the top of the one hill. And in years that it was muddy, it would become like a run up. And he had taken this wide angle, like black and white shot of somebody like running up to the tower. And it was like in that instant that it like made the connection in my brain, because it looked like the stuff that I was studying in film school.
Sure.
You know, it looked like this very classic black and white photo. And then like finally it like something in my brain like clicked. I was like, oh, you can do both these things. That like photography doesn't just have to be this like fine art thing. Like I knew sport photography existed, but like around cycling at the time, like you didn't really see that kind of imagery till a little bit later, you know, where like some of that stuff was around more, you know, during the Lance era. And I feel bad. I'm going to forget the photographer's name. I know he's like the most famous of all of them.
Graham Watson.
That's him.
Yeah.
Everything was like very, very Graham Watson. And it's not that it's not bad. It's all great photography. It's not bad, but it's very like, you know, very like Rutgers or like Reuters or like one of the, you know what I mean? They're there to like
newspaper-esque.
Yes. Very crisp. Everything's good looking. Like, and it's not a knock on that stuff, but it wasn't something that like spoke to me as far as like photography was concerned. But that image of Bill was like the first one I saw that I was like, oh, okay. Like maybe there's something that I can like mess around with in this, with both of these things that I like so much.
Yeah. How, as you kind of move into it, how much are you talking to other people about what you're like that are in the field already? You know, because I think of like, okay, it was all Graham Watson, but now we think of Jared and Ashley, is it Gruber? That are there, and they're like, that's very different what they're doing. And there's all kinds of people in the different worlds, and like in the gravel world, as people are meeting on this podcast, there's people like Tilly, there's people. Do you talk much about what you're actually doing? And early on, especially, did you approach people that you knew were already working in your field, or was it like, this is like the sacred science and I just got to figure it out?
No, you know, luckily, Bill and another photographer in the cyclocross and East Coast cycling space, Bruce Buckley, were like I was friendly with them at the time, like I eventually would end up racing for CX Harris. And so like I knew them both personally. So every now and then, I definitely had questions for them. But very early on, I had a friend that was living here who was doing work for some Euro mags. He was doing some shooting and he was doing a lot of writing, and then eventually would do some work with Manual for Speed and that ensemble. And so he was the person that I bounced ideas off of the most. In fact, the first digital camera that I purchased to start shooting cycling with was his old camera.
Okay.
I bought like a crop frame like T4i and a 50 millimeter lens. And I was just like, all right, cool. I'm just going to run this and see what happens.
Let's go.
And so that was like the first year or two. And then I bought a second camera from him. He had a 5D Mark II that he was selling to, upgrade to something a little bit faster. And then that camera was really where I think I learned how to do it. It was the first in those years, like, and then I believe it was Gloucester that year I went to with like the sole intention of shooting. Like I did some racing, but the gaps between what I was doing and when the pros race were big enough that it was comfortable to just like race my bike for 45 minutes, go back to the car, eat a snack, like get my stuff together and then shoot the rest of the afternoon. And I think that was, I want to say that was 2014 or 2013. And that was the first time I felt like maybe I could do this. It was the first time that like people made comments about photos or were like, whoa, this. And I look at them. There were a couple from that day that I'm like, okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Enough. It's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was the first time I got a sense of like, okay, maybe there's a chance I can do this. And it was the first time that like a brand or like a team had reached out about like possibly using a photo. And so, yeah. And then, so now just, it's all the same, I mean? Like I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate those relationships like 10 years later.
Yeah. Well, I think it's part of the reason I'm having these conversations is I just want to talk to everybody, like when we're standing out on Little Egypt, I'm always like, I don't know what's appropriate to ask or not. Like, because like there's the lines you don't want to cross, or like, I think even you and I were talking about some like, how do you talk to the brand about contract stuff? Because like you, I'm only 2 years behind you in this of being new. And so I'm navigating things, and there's just different times where I wish we had the ability to talk more other than like, here's 5 minutes while we wait for our people to fly past.
For sure. Yeah. It's funny. Like I've had more and more of those conversations. I've actually, Alex Roscoe and I had like a pretty good, heart to heart about the state of the industry and working and like that stuff when we were in Steamboat this year. The problem is a lot of people are like really safeguarded when it comes to like how to handle and like what you should be asking for as far as money is concerned. And, in some ways I get it, but in a lot of ways I think it hampers and hurts everyone in the end. Yeah. I don't know what the right answer is for that.
Yeah. And I don't either. And it's just like, that's why I like having conversations where trust can be built. And, and then later when like everybody's not listening, if like 5 months from now I have a question for you that I really need, I know that you'll trust me. And I think just in general in life, in the professional world at least, there's a lot of people, maybe not in film and photo, but they're having the same situations as they try and navigate their corporate world or wherever they're working. And so I like to let people know, like, I think we all kind of feel this way and relationships matter, and I don't know where to go from there. But yeah, it's interesting trying to navigate through all of that. And then the feeling when a brand asks you a price and you name it and they're like, oh, okay, cool. And you're like, well, I said something way too low.
Yeah, every time. Every time. I mean, we could just blow this whole episode up and just open up a whole can of worms, but maybe best left for another day.
No, well, we can walk away from that part right now.
Yeah.
It's all good.
I in that subject matter, I do think it's, especially now with the way the internet works and the way that everything is coming, there's always going to be new people.
Yeah.
There's always going to be people willing to do stuff for free.
Yeah.
It's just, you just hope that like the relationships that you build with, the folks that work in these brands and like just value the work that you're doing and are, willing to acknowledge this is how you pay for things.
Yeah.
And it's a job that's really hard to do part-time, like the reason that I kind of went all in on it is because like, if you're not available, like you just get passed by.
100%.
Like if you have other obligations, luckily with my situation now, I have like a pretty good buffer from when I know where I have to be and how I have to be there. But that being said, like I started my season off this year in March and I left home for 6 weeks. I drove across the country and there's no employer that is okay with you just like dipping out for 6 weeks.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
yeah. So we've kind of touched on trust. I want to dive into trust in a totally different area, and that is you work extremely closely with these athletes. I do too with the work I do with Chase. We are definitely in the people's space that we are documenting. And how long has that taken you, or how do you go about building that trust with the athlete to where like I've seen how close you are to Keegan before a race at the starting line, shooting at a fairly short focal length. How do you build that trust with the athletes, whether it's Keegan or somebody else, to just be like, all the time I'm here? Because I've seen pictures of you in the house in the morning taking, whether they're eating breakfast or putting their jersey on. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have and I fully acknowledge I have a pretty unique situation with that team. It wasn't asked of me initially to show up so early in the week. Santa Cruz was kind enough to offer housing as part of the deal for these trips. And so, in the past, I delayed a little bit my arrival. I would show up, if the team was there on a Monday, I'd show up on a Wednesday. But I quickly learned that, a lot of the stuff that happens during the week is some of the best stuff that we get.
Yeah.
And it's also the stuff that I like shooting the most. Race day to me is whatever. Like I understand the importance of it, but there are, depending on what event you're at, there's upwards of 100 photographers there. So everyone's getting a crack on the race course. And especially with, I understand the weight that comes along with Keegan, that regardless of folks that are working for him or working for brands that support him, like people are just going to take his photo no matter what, because he's usually in the mix. He's kind of set a standard for what it means to be, a competitor in the United States right now. So for me, it's like all that stuff around the house, all the stuff out reconning course is like the most important stuff for me to shoot. So I have changed that to a Monday instead of a Wednesday. And, as far as the trust goes, my first race with him in 2023, I was definitely conscious of giving specifically Keegan a fair amount of space. Like I know that he was safeguarded about like new people coming in, I also know like how, now that I've spent 2 years with him, like I know how professional he is at what he does and how he approaches it. And for me, first and foremost, I didn't want to interrupt that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to capture it, so I, obviously in the last couple of years, a like you said, like the space that I have left open between us has gotten a lot narrower.
Yeah.
Especially with the camera.
Yeah.
But he's certainly has become more comfortable with me being around, and has, he just knows that the camera's going to be in my hand most of the day. So
yeah, for sure. There is I don't know what it's like for you, but there is a definite like numbing of emotion while I try and do my job, especially mainly on race day. The rest of the week, I'm just kind of like present in the room as I film. But on race day, especially, like, it's so chaotic during the race to try and find these guys as they come by at 30 miles an hour now in their packs. But also, I don't want to get emotionally involved in whatever's happening, and I just want to document. And so, like, Unbound might be one thing for you, but I'm thinking you were at the Marathon World Championships this year, correct?
yes.
And how do you ratchet the emotion down on a day like that? Or maybe you don't. Maybe
No,
you're like
you don't.
Tilly cheering on the side of the road.
You
But,
definitely don't. Man, I learned early on that, like, I can't check that stuff.
okay. Sure.
Like, there were times like shooting across like a cross race, and it's not even, a client of mine, and you're watching it and like the hair stands up.
Yeah.
You get a bit of the chills. And so Switzerland was insane.
Yeah.
And I know one of listening to Tilly's episode, I might preempt one of your your rapid fire questions, but
It's all good.
if you ever have a chance to go to a world championship event of any of the disciplines, like, I highly recommend it. You'll never experience anything like it. I think Cyclocross Worlds in Louisville in 2013 may have set the standard as like
Yeah.
one of the greatest sporting events of all time.
Yeah.
But yeah, a world championship at any discipline is worth all of your money in tickets and travel.
So let's talk about this year's Marathon World Championships. As you're shooting things ahead of time, is there a feeling that like this might be the year and he can actually go do this? Or was it just like, we're going to go see what happens?
I think going into it, nobody was like saying it out loud, because
Sure.
you never want to like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of superstition and weird stuff that goes into sports. But I think after his performance at Leadville, like, it was clear that he had what it took to make it happen this year. And then that course specifically just suited his abilities, tons of climbing at elevation, a little semi, it was a pretty technical course from what it sounded like. Yeah, for sure. There was definitely like, I think everyone in the back of their minds heading over knew that it was a pretty good, he had an exceptional shot at getting it done. For me on race day, I would say I saw him twice on course. It was a logistical nightmare getting around in the mountains. There's
That's what I've heard.
one road up, one road down. If you didn't have a moto to like cut trail or dirt roads, or like a real intimate knowledge of how to get around in those mountains, it was difficult at best. But so we were able to catch him at a couple of the aid stations. And Gabby, our soigneur, would hang out in the feed zone, and I would try to run to somewhere that looked half decent on course to shoot as he came by. And at the second aid station, which I think was about 25 or 30 miles to go to the finish, he was coming in fourth wheel, like with Andre Sink.
Yeah.
And Keegan has a thing, like, if he's feeling good, he'll bark at you. He'll give you a couple barks on the way by. So I preempted it as he was coming to the corner as I was shooting, and he immediately barked back at me. And I was like, these guys are done. I was like, this race is a wrap. I was like, if we're 30 miles from the finish and he's barking and he's in that mood right now,
Yeah.
knowing that the biggest climb on course was still to come, like when we drove from there to the finish, like I, just had a sense that it was it was a wrap. And it was.
Yeah.
But unfortunately missed the finish because they had the main road into town to the finish blocked off and made us drive all the way back around the mountain. And we missed him by, I think, 5 minutes.
Okay.
You know, so, but still, it was like a day that you know, if you work for an athlete,
Yeah.
you know, if you work around an athlete, like to win a world championship is the ultimate. So
100%. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, you mentioned that we're going to get into rapid fire. Indeed, we are. So the first thing, if you listen to Tilly's episode, then you know this first question that's coming. Normally, I ask athletes that are on this podcast, what are we going to eat if we go to a gas station? But that's not what guys like you and I do. We have a snake meal, usually on race day, and maybe on a couple of the days leading. I know this year at Unbound, I had a snake meal every day I was there because I didn't have any time. So what does, as you are preparing for your day, or what does your snake meal look like? And how do you set yourself up so you're not like totally zonked out by the time you get to that next meal, whenever it happens?
I mean, I've been eating the same breakfast now. This is pretty boring, I guess, but I've been eating the same breakfast now for about 20 years or so, which is like a giant bowl of oatmeal, granola, peanut butter, some sort of fruit. I've graduated to like dumping a scoop of unflavored protein in it to get through some of these days. And that usually sustains me for a good chunk of like the bigger race days. I can make it usually to the finish. Sometimes I'll eat like a protein bar in the truck driving from spot to spot, but that's my snake meal for sure.
Okay. Right on. Speaking of your truck, you have that thing decked out basically to live within it if you need to. Is that right?
It's pretty primitive. You know, I just have like there's just like a little rooftop tent on the back of the bed. There's no like power source. I don't have like nothing crazy. There are, you know, it is in the works of having something that's like a little bit more livable.
Okay.
It would make my life easier for sure. But yeah, it's great. You know, some of the races, it works out really well. You know, if we have space for the tent to go up, I'll put it up. You know, I've slept in driveways of suburban neighborhoods before. And, you know, but usually there's a space for me in the house.
How many nights during a year are you sleeping in that thing?
Honestly, not as much as I'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, with all the gear and the work and everything, like I'm sure you've done a fair amount of driving in the Midwest.
Yep.
My passageway to the bulk of the races we do is I-70.
Okay.
And there aren't exactly amazing campsites real close to I-70. There's like a KOA on 70, you know, in a couple places. So if you want to listen to tractor trailers all night, cool. But I'm usually pretty cooked by the time I'm done with the first leg of like a Colorado drive or whatever. So I end up just like crashing in a hotel and starting over the next day.
Sure.
I use it more like after the races. I'll meet up with some friends out that way and do some camping and riding once the job's done. But
okay, right on. You might not have this. This is terrible rapid fire I'm going about here. This is like regular questions, but all good. How many miles do you think you've put on your truck per year?
Probably about 20 a year.
Okay.
Maybe give or take. Maybe some year. This year probably more than others. Like I did a couple big ones this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably about 20.
Yeah, that's about double. That's about double what I am, but I only worked from like May to September, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of Midwest miles for sure.
So many. I will now that we're at the ceremonial end of the season, I look forward to having a big break from I-70 for sure.
Yeah. It's I think the Holy Spirit of gravel said when she was on the pod, she's like, isn't it crazy that like the biggest races in our world take place in like Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, like
Yes. So I'm sure you've had these conversations with people that are not in the know, but they're like, oh, what do you do? And you're like, oh, I photograph professional bike racing, or I do video projects for professional bike racing. They're like, oh, you must get to go to some pretty amazing places. And you're like, yeah, Kansas, Nebraska,
yeah,
Arkansas. Yeah.
People I teach with, I heard that I put 10,000 miles on my truck this summer, and they're like, sweet, where'd you go? I'm like, Kansas, Nebraska, and Western North Dakota. And they just like stare at me like, what are you talking about? But yeah, that's our world. So
that being said, I did get to go to Colorado twice this year, and I never hate hanging out in Colorado. It's always enjoyable. So
for sure. Okay. Well, in all that driving around, and it sounds like you do some maybe some darkroom work as well, but you're probably going to have music on at some point, I would guess. And I'm wanting to know what is on the Brett Rothmeyer Spotify hot list.
I mean, it's kind of never ending. I don't discriminate when it comes to music, like not genre.
Sure.
Honestly, it just depends on the day. Someday it's like a lot of metal and punk stuff, and other days it's not.
Sure.
Other days it's like kind of like I was listening to a Halsey album last night or the other night on the last little drag on the way home just to see.
Fair.
It was Trent Reznor produced though, so
okay, well, yeah. All right. Do you have like, if you could only pick one song that you have to listen to?
I think that's impossible.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, there are songs that I lean on quite a bit, but I to narrow it down to one song is almost impossible.
Well, maybe I can help your narrowing here and say that if we were to have an Unbound gravel karaoke party activation before the race, and you came and we said, Brett Rothmeyer, here's the microphone. What song are you choosing to sing?
Oh man, that's tough. As you can tell, I'm a bit of a baritone. Man, that's tough. I'd probably pick a Lemonhead song as they're the ones I'm most familiar with.
Okay.
However, it was just Oasis Summer. Could maybe bang out something off of Morning Glory, but
always, yes, always. Okay, good to know. So people like you and I and Tilly, we have what I would call like race day prep particulars, or others might call them like peculiarities, as we get ourselves ready to go do our job, just like the bike racers do weird things or get themselves ready. What kind of things are you getting ready? And what is your routine like before or on race day?
Honestly, it's not much different than a race day. I have a hard time disconnecting that feeling in the house. Like,
sure.
I wake up, I know they're racing, I know I'm not racing, but I still get like race nerves, the same way. So I get like a little jittery. I probably drink too much coffee. The biggest thing for me is just batteries,
Yeah. Yes.
Is making sure I have my because once you're out of once you're gone, you're stuck.
Yeah.
So as long as the batteries are in the truck, I'm usually good.
Do you have a big backpack you carry everything in, or?
Yeah, I've been like kind of alternating between the backpack and a hard case this year. Sometimes like the backpack can feel pretty disorganized. The hard case, if it's just me in the truck, I'll just chuck it on the back seat and kind of like make lens selections or whatever from there. Yeah.
How many stamps do you got in your passport?
Honestly, one. This is my first. This was my first Europe trip.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't come from a family that traveled a lot.
Sure.
And then we had kids fairly young. I think I was 26 or 27 when my son was born.
Sure.
Yeah. So my son's actually done more international traveling than I have. So
Okay.
yeah, Switzerland was the first, and but then hoping to pilot on from there, I guess.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. Surely races like the Traca are in both of our futures here as we move forward. So
It's quite possible. Yeah. We'll see. Maybe hopefully, this is the time of the year you start making all your calls and sending all your emails about next season. So
yeah, 100%. So even you've been to Switzerland, but you've also been to all over the U.S. Are there places that you have gone as like a worker, essentially, that you've been like, I got to come back here for an actual like vacation? And again, we're joking about places like rural Kansas and Nebraska, but there's a lot of other places, like I think about California and Colorado and those, that maybe you look at it and think this would be cool to be at when I'm not having to just be super focused on the work part.
Yes. Man, I got to do a press trip with Shimano to Bellingham, right in my time at Dirt Rag, and that was exceptional. If you love mountain biking, that part of the world is just, and you're a couple hours from Whistler, and everything's kind of right there, and it's beautiful, it's clean. I don't know if that's the right word to use for it, but I know when I got off the plane, I just was like, I feel like I can breathe here. Like, it just, like, the air felt amazing. Yeah, Bellingham's great. Vermont, for any kind of cycling, is unreal.
Okay.
Like, just beautiful, great stuff all around. Yeah.
Right on.
As far as the circuits that we do, I mean, honestly, I can enjoy riding a bike almost anywhere. Like,
yeah, 100%. Yes.
We just came from the self-proclaimed mountain bike capital of the world. And while I will say that that's a little far-fetched, like, the riding's pretty good there.
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah. And some other places that you wouldn't think of, but Tennessee, if you ever have a chance to go to Tennessee, the riding there is incredible. The mountain biking is insane. The road riding there is exceptionally good. There's corners and pockets of that state that there's virtually no people and no traffic, and you can have hundreds of miles of road to yourself for a day. So,
yes. Yeah, I go check Tennessee out, folks. A year ago, actually, right now, I was out there filming the back end of Mater together, and it's absolutely stunning. Yep. So,
yeah,
absolutely stunning. Okay, two more quick ones. I would be remiss and scolded by the listener audience if I didn't ask you if you are into Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings.
Ooh, this is not gonna go over well, but neither.
Okay, well, that's okay.
Neither of those are in my realm of things.
Then the follow up is like, are you into Star Trek or Star Wars?
Definitely a Star Wars guy.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
I do have a Boba Fett tattoo, so.
Well, that leads directly into my last question. And how many tattoos do you have?
I don't know that I can count at this point.
Well, I thought that would be the answer.
Yeah, I think there are multiple. If we were to go, like, I couldn't even tell you on sessions that I've been at. So enough, but
Same.
somehow not enough at the same time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. People often ask me, like, how many tattoos are on your right arm? I'm like, are we counting it as one, or how many sessions it took?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's where we're at now. So.
Okay. And do you know the next one you're getting?
No, never. No. Honestly, like, I hadn't gotten one in a very long time, and then when we were at Steamboat, SRAM was dishing out tattoos at a local tattoo shop, and we went for Keegan to get one. He got like this cowboy frog on his leg.
Yes.
And we were all just sitting there. I was like, maybe I'll get something. And I was honestly looking at artist books, at the shop, and was just like, if they have time today, maybe like I'll get like a flash piece from them that they've drawn or something. And then somebody from the SRAM camp was like, dude, just get one of ours. If you want a tattoo, just get one. So I was like, all right, I'll whatever. I'll just go get one. So I got like a very small columbine flower whilst in Steamboat.
Gotcha. So. Awesome. Awesome. It's one of the ways that we can identify you easily from a distance. Is you're tall, thin, bald, and have a lot of tattoos.
That's right.
So.
Wait, maybe I'll just start wearing suits next year on course so to be unidentifiable.
Yeah. Well, Brett, this has been awesome. I appreciate you sharing your story and talking about what you do and why it works so well. So this was fantastic, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks a ton for having me on. I look forward to the future guest in this category. So
100%, and even more than that, I look forward to hanging out whatever road we find ourselves on next year, waiting for the Peloton to come through.
Yes, in some sort of fit of existential crisis, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Thanks for hanging out with Brett and me today. Do me a favor, and if you think someone might enjoy this episode, do me a favor and share it with them. And additionally, if you really enjoy the content, be sure to give us a 5-star review on the listening platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed and please give us a thumbs up. Like I said, this interview is part of a once-a-month series, the first Friday of each month, where we interview people within the field who are helping to capture all the beautiful images and photos while you are watching the race coverage. And we have another dandy in December coming up that I'm sure you will enjoy. Have an amazing week, and thank you so much for the support as always. And more important than anything you've heard all day, remember, you are loved.